Oh man. Okay. So I guess we're going to go ahead and get started today. Today I've been thinking about something that honestly my manager said to me in our last like one-on-ones. We have these, this is new to me, but apparently we have these weekly and monthly meetings about hitting goals and how you're doing with your goals and what your next steps are. And it's just really kind of funny to me because I'm just like, all right. In any case, one of the things that he said to me in one of my last meetings with him is that I needed to not be in such a rush, which I found kind of interesting, because in my position, everybody that came in at the same time that I came in is already looking for the next job. They're already trying to figure out how they can get promoted. They're already figuring out how they can try to get paid more. They're already like just constantly doing this. And so it's like part of the milieu of the group that I was hired with. And his advice was, just don't be in such a rush. Take the time to learn the skills and you'll progress at the rate that you need to. I was just like, okay. But I've been thinking about, oh, Roberta's got a story. No, okay. I've been thinking about this lately because I think it's an apt metaphor for life. There's often this thing where we're constantly in motion, and certain aspects of society keep us feeling like we need to constantly be on to the next thing and the next thing and the next thing. I'm thinking even about the gardening example that Jenny and Erica shared this morning. And Jenny's comment was, I wasn't tricked by the weather to plant too soon, but how many people were? They were in a rush to get on to summer. And now they're kind of upset that, the cycle does what it does and their plants are dying, So it's just this idea of how can we just be where we are and trust that if we go along with things at the rate, learning the skills, acquiring the knowledge that we need, that by the time we get to wherever it is we're trying to get, we'll have the capacities to actually fully enjoy being there versus being on to the next thing. So with that in mind, we're going to focus a lot today on the breath, and we're going to focus a lot on the sensations that are coming into the body. So we all know what that means. Okay, so let's go ahead and start. We're going to start in child's pose. And some of you may choose to actually use your blanket, and you'll just plant that blanket, that towel on your lap. It's just so that you can ground the thigh bones down and pull the thigh bones back. If you don't have a towel or don't wish to use a towel, that's completely fine. You'll just start by sitting tall on your shin bones, widen your legs as far apart as you need to. Those that have the blanket or towel, you're going to pull down and then pull back, and then you're going to start to hinge forward. Those that don't have the blanket, you're just going to start to walk your hands forward. And as you come forward, you want to push your hands down and forward and root your sit bones down and back. Those that are holding on to the blanket, you're still rooting your sit bones down and back. And I want you to pull the blanket back and then see if you can draw the shoulder blades onto the back. And you're going to just slowly inchworm your head down towards the floor, keeping as much length in the spine as you could possibly manage. And then I want you to see where you can find even more length. Awesome. And so for Barbara and for Erica, at some point you might find that maybe you want to put a block underneath your forehead if you're still pulling back on that blanket. You might also find that at some point maybe the head can just rest on the floor. For Jenny and Roberta, at some point you might find that you want to lift the heels of your hands away from the floor and maybe push your fingertips down and forward as you draw your hip bones back. And now all of us are just going to take 4 deep breath cycles here. And you're going to see how wide you can breathe into the ribs. You're going to notice how much you can fill both the stomach and the low back with breath. And then you're going to allow yourself to notice where you can start to soften and where you can start to relax. So oftentimes when we're rushing on to the next thing, we don't allow ourselves to really settle into the sensation of this moment and allow it to inform and feed us, allowing it to not only teach us, but also let us understand a bit better of the circumstances that we're working with. Great, you've got one more breath cycle here. And then at the end of your next exhalation, those with your hands forward will start to walk your hands back. Those with your hands back will start to walk your hands forward, and you'll slowly bring yourself up to sit. At this point in time, you might sit on a block or you might just sit on top of your shin bones, but you're just going to sit in Vajrasana for a moment. And I want you to just soften the gaze or close the eyes and just observe and notice how the breath is here. So we did a lot to just try to focus on the breath, and we're going to stay with that idea throughout. But as you're sitting here, just notice. And then as you're ready, let's sweep our right hand forward, and you'll start to create some little flamenco twirls with the hands, some little wrist circles. And you'll continue to breathe as you open your right hand out to the right, and you continue to circle the hand out to the right. And as soon as your right arm is completely perpendicular to your spine, so directly out to the right, make a big wide palm with your palm facing forward. Turn your thumb forward and down towards the floor. And then I want you to imagine that you're pushing against a wall. Lower your hand a few inches and start to tip your left ear up and over to the left. Now you're pressing back with that right hand and down with that right hand until you start to feel some type of sensation happening, perhaps along the right neck, maybe the right forearm, maybe the right wrist. You can choose to stay there or maybe reach your left arm up and over to grab your left ear and then lightly push your left ear into your left hand, pull your left hand into your left ear. Notice if you want to turn your chin down towards the floor or up towards the face, but up towards the face, up towards the sky, but you're just paying attention to where the breath is here, where the sensation is happening here. And then very gently, if you've taken some orientation with your head, bring your head back to neutral, release your left hand, bring the head back up to vertical, lower the left arm out to the left, turn the right palm to face forward, sweep the arm in front of you and cross it over to the left as you hook the left elbow underneath. Now, keeping your right arm as straight as you can, you're going to push your right arm into your left forearm. You're going to pull your left forearm into your right arm, and you might turn your gaze over your right shoulder. You might lift the right shoulder or lower the right shoulder, but you're paying attention to finding sensation for you. And you're noticing if you can breathe and if you can steady that breath. On your next exhalation, you'll gently release the left arm, let the right arm come forward, lower the right arm down, and then just take a moment to notice the difference between the two sides. If you'd like to take some shoulder circles or head circles, by all means do that. And then we'll settle before taking the other side. Great. And then gently, left arm comes forward. Take your little flamenco twirls of the wrist. Continue to breathe as you open the left arm out towards the left. And you're making that wrist circle as big as you can. Once the left arm is directly to the left, just make a palm, widen across the fingers so your palm faces forward. Start to turn your left thumb forward and down. Press against that imaginary wall behind you and then lower the left arm a few inches. From here, lift your head up and tip your right ear over towards the right. Again, you're pushing against that imaginary wall with the left hand. You can choose to stay here or reach your right arm to grab your left ear. Maybe push your left ear into your right hand, pull your right hand into your left ear, finding traction on that left side. You might turn your gaze down towards the floor or your gaze up towards the sky, but you're just pausing and you're breathing and you're noticing the sensation here. Awesome. If your head is anywhere but neutral, bring it back to neutral. Release your right arm. Bring your head back up to vertical. Lower the right arm down, sweep the left arm across and hook the right arm around the left. And we want to keep that left arm straight. And then again, you're just pushing your left arm into your right arm, pulling your right arm into your left. You might turn your gaze over that left shoulder. You might lift or lower that left shoulder just a bit, seeing where you can find sensation on your left side body. And then very gently, you'll inhale, release, lower both arms down, take a moment to pause, see if there's any little shoulder circles or wiggles that you want to get out there. Great. And then last little thing before we get off of this, I want you to curl your fingers around the back of your skull. So like if you go to the back of your skull, you've got these two bones here, and you're going to pull your hands up just above that space and almost dig your fingers into that. Now, once you're there, I want you to push your fingers into your head so your head comes forward a little bit. And then I want you to push your head back into your fingers until your head goes back. And you'll do this a few times following your own breath, and you're just trying to lightly traction the neck. So as you're pushing your fingers into your head, you're also thinking of lifting the spine up so that you're finding a little bit more space around the axis and the atlas, the two top bones of the spine. And you might find that even as you come forward this next time, you might want to sort of shake your head no a little bit from right to left, feeling how that pulls differently on the right side versus the left side. Awesome. And you're just pausing and you're breathing. You've got 2 more cycles just like this. And then the next time you go back, you might want to do the same thing of just pulling lightly with the fingertips against the skull, feeling that light traction going against the back of the neck. Awesome. You've got your last breath cycle here. Great. All right. Gently release that. Let's go ahead and come forward onto hands and knees. At this point, I would encourage you to pad your knees with something if your knees are sensitive. And then our blocks can just stay a little bit off to the right and to the left. Okay, so the first thing that we're going to do is now I want you to see if you can walk your hands forward until they're like, I don't know, 1 to 2 handprints forward of your shoulders. Keep your knees directly underneath your hips. Now you're going to push your hands down and forward and then walk your hands another handprint forward. So we're going to keep our knees over our hips. And then you'll see if you can push your hands down and forward, lift up through your inner armpits and wrap your triceps to the floor. And you'll continue to take this process until you find that your chest and maybe your head want to come closer to the floor. So your knees and your hips stay in one long line. You take a few breaths and then you maybe walk the hands a little bit further forward. And as you continue this about 4 more breath cycles, you're slowly inching your spine closer to the floor, but you're continuing to reach your outer upper hips up and back, and you're continuing to lift up through the inner armpits. And as you take these last 2 to 3 breath cycles, pay attention to what's happening in your head. So we spent all that time just a little bit ago pressing the head into the fingers, pushing the fingers into the head, and see how your head plays a part in this. Is it, yeah, there you go, Roberta. Is it in alignment with your spine? Great. And you've got 1 more breath cycle here. And you're just allowing the body to unwind. You're allowing yourself to learn, to shape, to grow the skills, to listen to those small movements. Awesome. On your next in-breath, walk your hands back 1 handprint. Now, just put enough weight into your hands to shift your weight forward. So your hands are still pretty far forward. And then if your knees were wide, walk your knees in and keep walking or shifting your torso forward until you're in this weird long plank position. So your hands are still pretty far forward. Your knees are still pretty far back. And then I want everyone to lower their pelvis. So your knees, your hips, and your shoulders form one line. Yep. Now you can curl your back toes under. Yep. And I want everyone to send their tailbone back, scoop your pubic bone up, and keep, there you go, pushing the floor away a lot. Reach your sternum forward and imagine your fingers are still, yep, in the back of your head. Push your head into your imaginary fingers to align your spine. Now, if you're happy as a clam here, you're just going to stay here, pushing down through your hands, lifting up through your belly, lengthening your tailbone back. If you'd like, you'll lift 1 knee off the floor, then you'll lift the other knee off the floor, and you're in this weird plank position, and you'll just hold for 3 breath cycles. And again, the tailbone's lengthening back, the pubic bone's drawing up, the sternum's reaching forward, and you're lengthening the back of your neck. Next exhale, lower your knees back down to the mat. Walk your hands back so they're underneath your shoulders, and just take 3 cats and cows. And you're just paying attention. How does this feel? So it becomes very easy for us to notice where we are in comparison to others, but how do we notice where we are in comparison to ourselves? Awesome. Great. After your next exhalation, go ahead and come to a still neutral spot. Okay, make sure your hands are directly underneath your shoulders. Your knees are directly underneath your hips. Bend just your right knee. This is just an interlude. So bend just your right knee. So bend it even more until your right heel comes close to your butt. There you go. And you're just going to take a few little ankle circles here. And you'll notice that because the knee is fixed on the floor, this ankle circle might be a little bit harder than it normally is because the knee can't participate as much. And then go the other direction if you haven't already. And you're just paying attention to what this feels like, noticing what you notice. Great. When you're even between the sides, go ahead and release the right foot back to the floor. And then we'll switch sides. So bend just the left knee even further, drawing the left heel closer to your pelvis. And then just take a few little ankle circles here. Great. And be sure to go both directions. We're just paying attention to how the breath is moving and how you're working in the body. Great. Okay. Go ahead and release that. Come to stillness. Let's add on. Tuck both sets of toes under first. Start to push your hands down and forward to draw your pelvis back towards your heels. Great. From here, walk your hands back just a little bit. Lift your knees a smidge away from the floor and then set your knees back down. From here, walk your hands back even further and start to walk your spine up to vertical. Okay. Now, once we're here in toe squat, I want you to make sure that you've tucked both the pinky toes under. Generally, lifting the knees up helps to make that happen, but it might not. And then we're going to go ahead and reach our right arm forward. The right arm is going to come out to the right again. Turn your thumb forward to bring the thumb to face behind you, and then bend your right elbow until your hand touches somewhere behind you. Now take your left hand behind you to grab your right elbow. And I want you to see if you can just draw the right elbow a little bit more towards the middle of your body, and then see if you can open up through that right shoulder. Now you can stay happily here, happy as a clam, or you might start to reach your left arm forward, and maybe your left arm will come up behind you. Maybe you'll bend the left elbow, maybe you'll touch your fingertips behind you. But we're just paying attention. Did the need to try to get all the way in have us skip a step? We'll eventually get there, but it's not so important right now. We're just paying attention to what's happening over here, developing the skill of keeping the right shoulder open. Awesome. If you're clasping hands behind you, gently release. Left arm comes up and forward and down. Release the right arm down behind you. And then again, wiggle out those shoulders, seeing if that needs to happen. And then if you need to, come forward, hands and knees, pitter patter the tops of your feet and take a counter stretch. And so again, you're just paying attention. So because we did that one side, we definitely know we're going to have to do it on the other side. But how are we reacting in those moments when it feels like we can't do as much as we'd like to, can't go as fast as we want to? What is the internal narrative? All right, when you're ready, let's go ahead and come forward once again. Put the hands on the floor. You can lift the knees up, send the inner edges of the feet back, and then lower the knees back down. From there, start to walk the hands even further back and come back up to sit. Now, again, because this is the second time, if you need to come out of this at any time, by all means, you can stand up on your shins, you can release the toes out. But we'll reach left arm forward, left arm out, turn the thumb forward and then down, and then bend that left elbow so the left hand is behind you. The right hand will swim behind you to grab the left elbow, and you can just inchworm the left elbow more towards the center of your spine. And now the focus here is really engaging that left scapula on the back so the left chest stays open, and you might then reach the right arm forward and up, bend the right elbow, and perhaps clasp the hands, perhaps not. It really doesn't matter, but we're paying attention to what's happening over here on this left side. And then you're noticing if you're breathing. So those that are having that right arm behind you, can you keep your head on top of your spine? Yeah, awesome. And you've just got one more breath cycle here. At the end of your next exhalation, if your right arm is bent, reach the right arm up, lower the right arm down, release the left arm down, and then come forward, hands and knees, pitter patter those toes, having a happy little temper tantrum. And then as you're ready, counter stretch. Okay. Great. Awesome. And then we're going to come forward, hands and knees once again. I would encourage you to use your blocks if you have them. If you don't, not to worry. But we're going to just take our navicular stretch today. But today we're going to do it a little bit differently. So I just want you to cross your left ankle on top of your right arch. Our legs are still close together, and you're just going to put your left foot into the arch of your right foot. And we're using the blocks today alongside our hands so that you can lift your left leg, push down into your right foot, and drag the foot down, the left foot down towards the right toe. And the blocks are there so that you can do that again. So you'll just shift your weight forward, push into the blocks, lift the left knee, drag it down. And so you'll just take that 3 or 4 times, shifting the weight forward, pushing the left foot into the arch of the right foot, and dragging it back. And you're just noticing how that feels. Like sometimes we feel that we have to repeat things in order to get them, and that makes everything happier. And sometimes we don't always like having to repeat things because it's like, why can't I just do one and done? Okay, so after you've done that 3 or 4 times on the right side, you'll go ahead and come forward, hands and knees, and then you'll switch sides. So now you've got your right foot into the arch of your left foot. The blocks are there to help you just push down to lift your right knee, push the right foot into the arch of the left foot and drag it out towards the left big toe. And then you just shift your weight forward and do that a few times. And as you continue these next 2 to 3 to 4 times, you're just paying attention to where you initially place that right foot. Do you place it always in the same spot? Does it feel good to be more towards the middle of the foot, the outer edge of the foot, closer to the big toe? Great. Awesome. And you got one more set. And then after you've done your 4th set, you're just going to come forward, hands and knees once again. Curl both sets of toes under. Push your hands down and forward and start to lift your hips up and back. And as you come up and back, I want you to keep your knees super bent. We spent all this time focusing on our feet. So with your knees super bent, your hands pressed down and forward, keep lifting up through your inner armpits. Let's see if we can reach just our right heel towards the floor. And then you're just pausing and you're breathing. And after you've taken about 2 breath cycles there, you'll switch sides, you'll bend both knees, and then you'll reach just the left heel to the floor. And again, you'll pause there and breathe 2 times. And you're just noticing what that feels like. And then after you feel complete and balanced between both sides, you'll bend both knees and you'll lower your knees back down to the mat. And then you'll walk your hands back towards your knees and you'll stand on your shins. Okay, so still with that block, or rather that blanket underneath for most of us, I want you to bring your blocks, if you have them, alongside your thighs so they're really parallel with the thighs, and just see if your fingers can touch those blocks. Great, and if you don't have blocks, no worries, your fingers are just reaching down. And then we're going to go ahead and inhale, sweep your left arm up and over. And as you exhale, we're going to take a little side bend towards the right. So standing tall on our shins, we can lightly push down into that right hand, right block. And then you can bend your top elbow, so that's your left elbow, and hold the back of your head. Now, what I want you to pay attention to here is, has your left hip shifted back? And can you draw your outer left hip forward? And then maybe you need to bend your right elbow and draw your right shoulder blade forward. And we're just paying attention to what's happening on that right side between our ribs and our hips. So the left side between our ribs and our hips. So that outer left hip comes forward a little bit. The outer right shoulder comes forward a little bit. So there's a little rotation to keep the spine neutral. And then when you're ready, you'll start to push into that right hand and even more, straightening the arm if you can. Reach out through your left arm, reach your left arm out to the left, reach out through the left hand to bring the spine back up to vertical, and then lower the hand down. And then you'll just take some circles, move around here. Notice what you notice between the sides. And then we'll try that on the other side. So fingers down towards the blocks. Inhale, sweep your right arm up and overhead. As you exhale, happy little side bend over towards the left. And at this point, maybe your left palm can come down to the block, maybe not, but we're gonna push down into the left hand, reach up through the right hand and bend your right elbow to hold the back of your head. Now, holding the back of your head, of course, you push your head into your hand into your head. You might at some point need to bend the underneath elbow, so that's the left elbow. But we want to see if that right outer hip can come forward and the outer left shoulder can come forward, so that we're doing a genuine side bend versus a twist. I mean, we are twisting the hips and the shoulders to keep it an actual side bend, but we're trying to take out the twist. Awesome. And you're just pausing and you're breathing. You're hugging your tailbone down, your pubic bone up. And then to come out of this, you'll push into the left hand first to straighten the arm if it's bent. Straighten your right arm. Reach your right arm up and out towards the right, as though someone's pulling your right hand to bring your spine back up to vertical, and then lower the right hand down. Cool. From here, let's go ahead and hinge at our hips once again. Lower our hands down to the floor, and I want you to walk your hands forward to that awkward plank pose. So your knees are still down, your hands are slightly in front of your shoulders, and then shift your weight forward. So you've got one line from your tailbone through your knees, and then your tailbone up through your shoulders, and your shoulders up through your skull. Happy to stay here or curl both sets of toes under. You might then lift one leg off the floor, keep lengthening your tailbone back. You might lift the other leg off the floor, keep lengthening your tailbone back, and you'll find yourself in a plank pose. And you'll just pause here and you'll breathe, and you'll pause and you'll breathe. Nice work, ladies. Gently lower both knees back down to the mat. Walk your hands back a smidge, curl both sets of toes under, and lift your hips back up, downward facing dog, and you'll just pause and you'll breathe, and you'll notice what this feels like. Now in this down dog, I encourage you both, or all of you rather, to bend both knees. And then, like you're wagging a dog, slightly shift your hips a little right to left. That might straighten one leg, it might not, but you're just seeing if you can lengthen the side body. So we just did that side body stretch. See if you can bring that information, that skill, that knowledge into your down dog. And then when you're ready, you'll come to stillness. Push your hands down and forward, lift your armpits up and back. Lift the outer hips up and back, and send your inner thighs back and apart. If you can, pull the kneecaps up and reach your heels back and down towards the floor. Nice job. All right, let's go ahead and inhale and come forward, hands and knees. And then as you exhale, pause here. Cool. Let's go ahead and draw our crown forward, our sternum forward, our tailbone back. Yep. Draw your low belly in. And then reach your right foot back, tuck the toes under, and pause here. Now, I want you to draw your inner right thigh up, squeeze your outer right hip, push your hands down enough so that you draw your front ribs in and back, and then lengthen your tailbone back. Now you're going to push into your hands and hover your left knee, that's the bent knee, away from the floor. The whole knee lifts away from the floor, left knee. Cool, that's clear as mud. Go ahead and lower down and take a moment to pause and look up here. All right, so our hands are pushing down, our foot is going back. We're just gonna lift the underneath leg away from the floor. Okay, let's try it again. All right, so right leg goes back, push down through the hands, lengthen the tailbone down, and then you're just going to push into the hands and that right foot enough, there we go, to hover the left leg away from the floor, and you'll breathe, and then you'll exhale and lower that down, and then you'll do that 2 more times. And so you're doing this on your own, and you're trying to see if you have enough core engagement to lift that leg without necessarily having to hike the hips up too much, just pulling the belly up to lift the hips. Nice job. After your last one, you'll lower that left knee down and then pause. Sweep your right leg up parallel to the floor. Now, so see if you can use all that same core engagement, that skill there to lift up through the inner right thigh, reach back through the right big toe like you're pushing into the floor, and then maybe you'll reach your left arm forward. And we'll pause and we'll breathe for 3. We'll pause and we'll breathe for 2. We'll pause and we'll breathe for 1. Great. Lower the left hand, lower the right leg, curl the toes under, lift the hips up and back, downward facing dog. And in this down dog, I want you to fidget and I want you to move. Now, in our attempt to fidget or move, or maybe you're completely still, we're paying attention to how we're gaining knowledge, how this simple shape that we use oftentimes as a resting pose can inform us, how each step in life that we're taking can inform us if we just allow ourselves the opportunity to explore it, to be within it, versus constantly concerned about what the next step may or may not be. All right, let's go ahead and come to stillness. Shift ourselves forward, hands and knees once again, and then we're going to try all that on the other side. So reach your left leg back, make sure your hands are directly underneath your shoulders, lift up through the inner left thigh, squeeze the outer left hip. Now you're going to lengthen your tailbone back and push into your hands enough so the front ribs come back, and then you're going to hover the right leg off the floor. Yep. And then you lower it down, and you just do a total of 4 of those. And you're just seeing how that feels to really have that sense of stability and engagement in the core, so that when one of your legs of your stool is taken away, there's not this giant hiccup. And I guess maybe that's the purpose of developing the skills. When something is taken away, it doesn't upset or offset us as much. And Jenny, I want you to think of pressing down more into your index fingers and knuckle pads so that the heels of your hands stay light, even though you've got those towels underneath your wrists. Okay. And then on this next one, as that right knee comes down, let's float our left leg up. Pause, lift up through that inner left thigh, push down through both hands, and you might stay here or you might reach your right arm forward. Draw your outer right hip back. Outer right hip back even more, Barbara. There you go. And then when you're ready, you'll gently lower the right hand, lower the left knee, and you can either take some cats and cows and move back to child's pose, or you can go back to downward facing dog. But you're going to just take the opportunity to explore what feels best to you, what allows you to notice what's happening in your body. Great. And when you're all done exploring whatever you have happened to be doing, we're going to find ourselves back in hands and knees. And then from hands and knees, stand tall on your shins. All right. So blocks still ideally somewhere near your outer hips. If you don't have them, no worries. We're going to just bring your hands to our hips. So you can either have hands on hips or you can touch the blocks, but you're going to push down into your right thigh to see if you can lift your left leg and step your left leg forward. Great. Awesome. So some of you are just going to stay right here. Some of you will bring both hands to the belly of your left thigh and shift your weight forward just a little bit. So you'll push down into left foot, down into right thigh, right knee. Hug those points together until you feel a nice stretch happening across the front of your right thigh. Some of you will stay there. Some of you who will bend your right knee towards your butt and reach around with your right hand to grab the outside edge of your right foot. And then you're just hugging that foot towards your butt towards your foot. You're pushing down into the right knee. You're pushing down into the left foot. You're hugging those points together, finding stretch. Whoops. And you're going to see if you can keep the chest and heart open as you do that. Nice. And then very gently, if you've got that back foot, you're going to release it back to the floor. You will shift your weight back, bring your hands to your blocks. Start to walk your blocks forward And just as we did at the very beginning, you want to see if you can keep your spine super long. So just as we were arcing down towards that anahatasana, see if you can keep your spine long as you start to walk your hands forward and perhaps turn the blocks down, folding over that front leg. Now, some of you will stay here with the whole sole of your left foot on the floor, and you'll pause and you'll breathe, and you'll notice that with the whole sole of the left foot on the floor, you feel sensation in a different part of your body. Some of you will peel the sole of the left foot away from the floor, so the toes are now pulling back towards your left knee. Some of you will stay there. Some of you will spin the whole left thigh to the left, and you'll notice what happens as you do that. But wherever you are, whichever step, whichever stage is perfectly wonderful stage to be at. You just want to see if you can pause and if you can breathe and if you can keep that spine as long as possible, the shoulders arcing away from your ears as long as possible. Awesome. On your next in-breath, if that foot is externally rotated, internally rotate the thigh. Everyone bend your knee, shift your weight forward. Go ahead and walk your blocks back, plant your palms and make your way to a low lunge. So just lift the back leg up and away from the floor. Great, pause here. Now take a big breath in. Next exhale, step back to plank pose. Take a big breath in here. Next exhale, lift the hips up and back, downward facing dog. And you're just pausing. So these are all similar shapes, familiar shapes we've been in many times. But how did that setup lead into them today? How do you feel in them today? Great. Next in breath, come forward, hands and knees. As you exhale, walk your hands back and bring your spine up to vertical. All right. Blocks are roughly alongside your hips on the tallest setting, and you can either touch the blocks in order to shift the weight and step your right foot forward, or you can have your hands on your hips and step the right foot forward. Whoa, ideally we want to try not to wobble so much, so we'll see how that happens. And then some of you will stay there. Some of you will bring your hands onto the front of that right thigh. You'll shift your pelvis forward just a little bit. And then we're going to push down into the right foot, push down into the left knee again, suck those points together, lengthen your tailbone down, and you might stay here happy as a clam. You might bend your back knee, drawing your left heel closer to your left butt, and reach around with your left hand. Now, if you've chosen to take that option with the left hand, you want to hug the left shoulder back, or rather left shoulder forward, right shoulder back, and you're just hugging your heel to your glute to your heel, paying attention to what's happening in your left knee. Awesome. And Roberta, see if you can draw that right shoulder back just a little bit. Yep. So squaring our shoulders to the top of our space. And then very gently, you'll release that left foot. You'll bring your hands to your blocks. So hopefully blocks are still alongside your hips. You'll start to straighten that front leg. And so our right foot, whole sole of the foot is still touching the floor. And with our hands, we can start to walk, or with our blocks, we can start to walk our hands forward. And we're trying to keep our spine as long as possible. And you'll notice what this does, keeping the whole right foot on the floor. Where do you feel sensation here? Some of you will like that and stay here. Some of you will peel the sole of your right foot up and away from the floor, and you might need to slide your right heel forward to accommodate your hamstrings. And you might lower the blocks down. You might stay where you are. You might externally rotate that whole right thigh. So now maybe your right toes are pointing out towards the right, but you're just pausing in your breathing. Whichever stage you're in, is the spine long? Is the breath full? And are you able to relax into whatever experience you are having? The thing that I'm noticing is that being in such a rush for me takes me out of being able to relax and enjoy the experience that I'm having, because I'm constantly wishing or hoping or wondering why I'm not further along. And further along, I'm putting in air quotes, or I would be if my hands weren't attached to blocks, but you know. All right, if that right leg is externally rotated, bring it back to center. Everyone bend your front knee, shift your weight forward. Plant your hands on the floor. Straighten your back leg long. So you're now back in that low lunge. And you're just going to take a moment to pause here. So just as we did when we just lifted the knee off the floor, I want you to push down into your hands, push down into your back foot, lift the low ribs enough to step your right foot back to meet the left in plank pose. Great. And then you're just going to pause here and you're going to breathe and you're going to notice how this is going. At the end of your next exhalation, you'll bend your knees and lift your hips, downward facing dog. Awesome. And if you need to pedal, you pedal. If you need to be still, you be still, but you're allowing yourself to adjust based on what's happening for you in this moment. The knowledge, the skills, the expertise you've gained in your life on and off the mat and how that's playing out here. Awesome. All right, let's gently bend the knees, lower them down to the mat, and sit in Vajrasana. So you might sit on a block, you might not. It's totally up to you, but you're going to sit on your shins again back in Vajrasana. Okay, and I want you to sit tall and soften and close the gaze. And with the gaze inward, see how you can really stack your head over your shoulders. See how you can really stack your shoulders over your hips. Are you leaning forward? Are you leaning back? Is there any slumping in the spine, or can you sit tall and straight through the spine? Great. Now just touch your shoulders with your fingertips and then lift your elbows out so they're parallel to the floor. Now inhale and lengthen up through your spine like you're literally using your hands to pull your skull up. And on your next exhale, you'll just start to rotate towards the right. And so if the eyes are still closed, that helps because then you don't have to worry so much about what it looks like externally, but you're just paying attention to what it feels like internally. And so you're rotating towards the right. And you'll push down into your left sit bone. You'll feel the left side of the body wrap around towards the right. And you might stay here. You might bring your left hand outside of your right knee. You'll continue to push down into your left hip, reach up through your crown and empty the belly on the right side as you rotate to the right. You might happily stay there or reach your right hand back, palm faces forward. And you might then turn your gaze to look over your right thumb. Great. On your next in-breath, you'll gently unwind. You'll come back to center. Hands can either touch the shoulders or rest on your thighs, but you'll just take a moment to notice the difference between the sides. And then we'll go ahead and try all that on the other side. So fingertips touch the shoulders again if they're not. Elbows lift parallel to the floor. Lift up through the spine. And as you exhale, I encourage you to close your eyes and rotate towards the left. And as we go to the left, pay attention to what's happening on this side. So continue to root down into that right sit bone. Continue to lift up through the vertebra and continue to draw the left low belly in. You might happily stay there or bring the right hand to the outside edge of the left thigh. You might just stay there and continue to breathe into that right sit bone, the right shoulder, rotating to the left. You might reach the left hand back, parallel-ish to the floor, palm faces forward, thumb faces up. And you might just breathe and look over that back thumb or towards that back thumb. Awesome. On your next in-breath, you'll gently come back to center. Maybe hands are on top of the shoulders, maybe hands are on top of the thighs, but just take a moment to pause and take a moment to breathe. Any little movements that you need to do, by all means, do that. Great. And then we're going to stand up on our shins again. All right. So now that we're on our shins again, blocks are still near our outer hips. If you did so the first time with your fingers touching the floor, you might continue to do that, or you might draw your hands to your hips, but we're going to root down into our left shin bone a lot. And without swinging your leg out to the right, see if you can just step it forward to come forward. Yay. Nice. Okay. And then from here, we're going to see if we can shift our way forward just a little bit. This would be one in which now I would encourage you to take the blocks and start to walk them forward with you. And then you might curl the back toes under and walk the back knee back just a smidge. Okay, now push into your right foot, push down into your left knee, push down into your blocks, and see if you can lift your spine up and away from the floor just a bit. Now I want you to think of hugging your hips in, so the outer hips in, and then pulling the legs together this way until you feel containment happening in your legs and your pelvis. Great. From there, hands can come back to the shoulders. Now, inhale, lift up through the spine, push down through the legs, hug everything in. On your next exhale, we'll start to rotate towards the right. And so we're just going as far as we can, and we'll possibly just stay here, hands on our shoulders. Some of you might bring that left hand to the outside edge of the right knee. And as that right knee pushes out just a bit into the left hand pulls in. You're pulling up on the low belly on the right side, and you're letting that outer left hip come forward. You might then reach back through your back hand, your right hand, and you might rotate through the spine, through the head. And you're just pausing in your breathing. You're noticing the foundation of the feet more than anything else, and how that creates the stability in the pelvis, which allows the rotation in the spine. Awesome. Very gently, let's inhale and unwind. Come back through center. Hands will come forward onto blocks. This time you're going to straighten your back leg long. Some of you will spin that back foot down for warrior one. Some of you will keep it in high crescent lunge position, but you'll then come up for high crescent lunge. So either high crescent lunge or warrior one, but you're going to come up. It's depending upon what feels best to you. And again, we're paying attention to the foundation. So we put all this energy into our feet. We've really rooted down. We're hugging into the pelvis. And now we're seeing if we can lift up through the torso, reach up through the arms, and lift up through the chest and the head and the gaze. How confident, how stable does your pose feel? Because we took all this time getting into it. On your next exhale, hands will come back down to the floor. You'll return to a low lunge, and then step back to downward facing dog. And then you'll pause and you'll breathe. If you need to fidget around, fidget around. If you need to be still, but you're just seeing what that feels like. And then when you're ready, we'll come to stillness. Inhale, bend your knees. Exhale, start to walk your hand. Lower your knees all the way down to the mat. That was clear as mud. Walk your hands back to your knees and then stand up on your shins once again. Great. And so if you need to walk your blocks back so they're alongside you, please do that. So blocks are roughly outside of our hips. And you can either still touch the blocks or hands come onto the hips. We're going to step our left foot forward without swinging the left leg to the left. So to do that, we really need to push down through the right side, engage that core in order to step the left leg forward. Yay, Kayla would be so proud of us. Okay, at that point in time, you might want to take the blocks forward just a little bit if they're there, just so we have them for future reference. Okay, cool. Now from here, we'll shift our weight forward, put our hands onto our blocks, walk your back foot back just a bit, push down into the left foot, push down into the right foot, push down into the fingertips to lift the spine up. And so we're hugging those outer hips in, we're hugging the legs together, scissoring them that way, and then we can bring our hands on top of our shoulders. Awesome. Now, pushing down into the two legs and hugging them this way and then hugging the outer hips in, let's lift up through the spine and then we'll exhale and start to rotate towards the left. And so we're noticing what's happening here. Is that outer right hip coming forward? Are we still pushing down to the left foot, the right knee? Some of you will stay there and release the right hand outside of the left knee. The left hand will lightly pull into the right knee, left knee. The left knee will lightly push out into the right hand. And then you might release the left hand back and rotate through the spine and just pay attention to what's happening through the spine, what's happening in the legs, what's happening in the breath. On your next in-breath, you'll gently unwind. Yeah. Let's go ahead and release our hands down to the floor or the blocks, your choice. Tuck the back toes under, straighten the back leg long. Now again, set your feet up either for high crescent lunge or warrior one. It's your choice, but you're going to push down into the feet first and then bring the spine all the way up to vertical. And so all those same actions are still happening. We're pushing down into the legs, we're hugging them in, we're hugging our outer hips in, we're finding that stability in the legs to find the groundedness in the pelvis, and then lifting up through the vertebra, lifting up through the arms, broadening across the chest. Awesome sauce. On your next exhale, hands come back down to the floor. Step yourself back to downward facing dog. Awesome. And then from down dog, let's go ahead and lower our knees to the mat. For this one, let's take our knees slightly wider than our shoulders. Push your butt back towards your heels. So let your big toes still touch. We're going to go to a child's pose. There we go. And then pause here though. Keep looking at your hands. Walk your hands forward. And then start to walk your hands up and over to the right. Now, as odd as this is going to sound, I want you to walk your right hand next to your right shoulder. So bend the right elbow and plant the hand on the floor. Push down through your left hand, isometrically pull your left hand back, your left hip back, push down into your right hand, and start to rotate your chest a little bit towards the right. So you're actively pushing down in that right hand, you're actively pulling back with that left, and you're trying to reach your sternum towards that right thumb to find a rotation in the upper chest, while also finding this crazy side body length on the left side, left shoulder, left hip. Great. And you can pause and you can breathe here, maybe lifting up and coming into the shape just a little bit with each breath to find just a bit more rotation. Yeah. And then very gently, you'll return your chest towards the floor. Push down into your hands, walk your hands forward. Walk your hands back to center. And then just notice how it feels to be between the sides. Can I have a thumbs up if you got any sensation on the left side when we did that? Okay, great. All right, let's try that on the other side. So we're gonna walk our hands forward and to the left. So arcing them up and over to the left. Once you're there, step your left hand back so your left hand is in line with your left shoulder. Pause. Push your right hand down and forward. Pull your outer right hip back. Yep, there you go, Barbara. And then start to push into that left hand in order to rotate the ribs towards that left thumb. And I really encourage you to play with the breath. So that might mean you inhale and come out of the shape a little bit, and you exhale and you rotate the ribs more towards that left thumb. But you're paying attention to how that right side body is feeling. And you really can, as odd as that sounds, really rotate the sternum towards that left thumb. So it's a twist in the upper spine. Nice. And you've got one more breath cycle here. And then very gently, you'll inhale and return your chest just square to the floor. Walk your left hand forward, walk both hands back towards the center of your space. Awesome. Take a breath cycle to be there. And then you'll slowly walk your hands back towards your hips and bring your spine up to vertical. All right. And just take a moment to sit. So keep the gaze inward or the eyes closed and just take a moment to sit. How does it feel for you here and now? Cool. If the eyes are closed, gently open them. Swing your butt to the floor and your legs around in front of you. All right, and you might sit on a blanket, you might not, it really depends on how your body feels, but we're gonna just cross our left ankle on top of our right. And then crisscross applesauce, bring your ankles underneath your knees. Awesome. Some of you might stay here and you'll just manually remove the flesh so that you can internally rotate the thighs a little bit more. Some of you will take that left ankle and cross it on top of the right thigh. And if you take that, you might lift your butt up and slide your pelvis more towards the right. But then you're gonna hinge forward at your hips. Our blocks are happily providing assistance here as we come forward. So we're paying attention to what's happening on that outer left hip. And you're just pausing and you're breathing. And those of you that have your legs crossed in fire log, aka Agni Stambhasana, I want you to make sure that that left leg, left foot is active. And you're just hinging at the hips and you're breathing and you're noticing what feels interesting to you. And as weird as this sounds, think of sticking your butt back behind you even though you hinge forward. Great. And then you're going to gently come out of this shape. So you'll walk your hands back, you'll bring your spine back to vertical. From here, you're going to take whichever type of seated twist you want. So crisscross applesauce, you might just extend both legs long and take Ardha Matsyendrasana. You might take an open version of Ardha Matsyendrasana. You might take Marichiasana. You're just taking whatever type of twist feels good to you. Great. And then you'll gently unwind. Extend both legs in front of you, Dandasana, staff pose. Before we do the other side, make sure your legs are active. Your feet are pulling back towards your knees are pulling up towards your hips. Plant your hands roughly alongside your hips. I want your fingertips to still face forward. Bend your elbows a smidge. Hug your shoulder blades onto your back so it pushes your chest forward. Hug your elbows towards each other, and you're just going to see if you can lift your sternum up, push your thighs down, pull your toes back, hug the shoulder blades onto the back. Awesome. All right. And then you'll release that, and then we'll try the other side. So right ankle crosses on top of the left, crisscross applesauce, both feet are underneath your knees. You can stay here and just hinge forward. You might lift that right ankle on top of the left knee, and if so, maybe lift your butt up and slide it over towards the left. And then you can start to hinge forward at the hips. But we're paying attention to what's happening here on the outer right hip. If you're going for Agni Stambhasana, make sure that right foot is active and engaged to ensure that the knee remains aligned and we're not over torquing the knee joint. And then you're pausing and you're breathing. And as best as you can, you're trying to find a long, neutral spine. So in many instances, it really does feel like you're sticking your pelvis back behind you in order to find a little bit more neutrality in the vertebra, but it also intensifies the stretch that you're feeling on that outer right hip. And so you're just breathing. You're breathing. I got about 2 more breath cycles here. Awesome. And then very gently, you're going to start to come out of this shape. You might extend both legs long forward in front of you beforehand, and then you're going to take a twist, whichever type of twist you want, but that right knee will be bent. So you might take Ardha Matsyendrasana. You might take Marichiasana. So Ardha Matsyendrasana is Lord of the Fishes, or rather half Lord of the Fishes. And it can be closed or it can be open. And then Marichiasana, instead of having the leg crossed in front of you, it's still on the same side of the body. Okay. Awesome. And then you'll inhale and gently unwind from this. Extend both legs long in front of you, Dandasana once again. Hands alongside your hips. Let's bend both of our knees and plant both of our feet on the floor. Okay, let's push down through the hands, hug the shoulder blades onto the back to push the chest forward. Push down through the hands, lift the hips, and draw your butt closer towards your heels. Now bend the elbows even more and then straighten them again to draw the shoulder blades onto the back to find a nice stretch happening across the front, upper arms. Awesome. And then gently release and come back. From here, you're going to make your way onto your backs. I encourage you, if you have 2 blocks, to make sure they're equally accessible to you. I also encourage you to cover your body before coming to the floor. So we're going to do 3 bridges, legs up the wall with the block, and then we'll go to Shavasana. So you figure out if you want to cover the body before you lay down on the floor. Great. And then once you find yourself on the floor, the first thing we're going to do is just bend our knees and plant our feet on the floor. Grab one of your blocks and place it in between your inner upper thighs. Great. Everyone bring your hands alongside your hips. Turn the palms to face the sky. Now, you might need to widen your arms a bit, so you pay attention to that, but I want you to draw the shoulder blades onto your back until it feels that there's real contact there. And then I want you to take your inner groin area, so that's the part closest to your pubic bone, and reach it forward and down towards your heels. Squeeze your block, press into your feet, lift your hips. Yep. And so you're still thinking of those inner groin softening down towards your feet. You're hugging into that block. You're pushing down into the upper arms. And then you'll exhale and lower down. And you'll do that 2 more times on your own, but you're really paying attention to how slowly you can move. So first, the inner thighs soften down towards the feet. You hug into the block and push down into the big toe mounds, and then start to press your feet down even more to lift your hips. Push down into the upper arms, so the shoulder blades flatten against the back. Push into the back of your head, lifting your sternum towards your chin. Yep. And then you'll slowly come down. And then on this third one, you can take whatever arm variation you'd like. But again, those inner groins soften towards the feet. You push into your big toes, you hug into that block, and then you lift your hips up and away from the floor. And once you find your hips high, you wrap the shoulder blades onto the back even more. You might just keep pressing down into those hands. You might want to walk the hands and grab the outer edges of the mat. You might want to walk the hands underneath and grab opposite elbow. You might want to robot those arms. But again, we're pushing the upper arm bone down. We're pushing the feet down. We're sucking the inner groin down towards the heels and lifting the sternum up and pushing the skull down. And then as you're ready, you'll gently lower down. And then when you come down, I do encourage you to take that block out from between your thighs, just for a moment. And then you'll push down through both feet, lift your hips up, and slide one or both blocks underneath your pelvis. And once the block is underneath your pelvis, you might stay there with your feet on the floor. You might lift one end or both legs up towards the sky. And wherever you are, notice what it feels like to turn your palms to face the sky, what it feels like to wrap the shoulder blades onto the back so that your heart and sternum lifts, and then lightly push into the back of your skull. If your legs are up, reach up through the inner edges of the feet and the outer edges of the feet evenly. The kneecaps will now draw down towards your pelvis. The heels will reach up and away from your pelvis. Great. And then very gently, you'll bend one knee and then the other, and slowly lower your feet onto the floor. Before coming out of this shape, hollow the inner thighs to the floor, push into your big toes, engage the backs of the legs, lift the hips up and away from the floor. Remove the blocks, and then bring your pelvis back down. Now, when you get back down, I want you to check in. What do you feel like you need to do to take the next step? And we're moving towards Shavasana, but what feels best to you? When we allow ourselves to be in this moment, in this stage of life, whatever it happens to look like, it gives us the capacity to respond appropriately. So some of you may find that you want to be still. Some of you may feel like you want to take a few final shapes, some of you may find that you want to go straight to Shavasana, but you're going to allow yourself to listen inward. Because the thing that I'm noticing is, yes, I do have all these peers that are, looking for the next step, but it kind of feels like a lot of us are running around like chickens with our heads cut off, not really quite sure of what it is we're going towards, just for some reason thinking that where we are isn't good enough. And all this is to say, it's not that, we're never going to move forward, but I think it's very helpful for us to know what we're moving towards and why versus what we're running away from. And sometimes, more importantly, what we're unconsciously running away from. So as you take these final few shapes, if you're moving, allow yourself to settle in. And those of you that are in your final resting pose, we're going to complete our practice today with just a little bit of breath work and a body scan. So please make sure you're comfortable wherever you are. I like that setup, Jenny. That looks good. All right. So the first thing that I'd like you to do is, once you find yourself in your position, you're just going to take a big breath in and then a big breath out. And then the next time you take a big breath in, you'll pause at the top and hold the breath for just a beat or two. And then you'll take a big breath out. And then this last time, you'll take a big breath in. You'll pause at the top. You'll see if you can suck in a little bit more breath. And then a big breath out. And whichever three of those felt the best to you, you'll repeat that 2 more times. Just allowing ourselves to drink in this moment. And then very gently, you'll just allow the breath to return back to an involuntary state, meaning you're not attempting to direct or control it. It's just doing its thing. And we'll start at the crown of our heads. And I want you to imagine that we're slowly pulling or pouring honey or amrita, which is this nectar, this life affirming nectar into the body. And it's got this honey, sticky, gooey quality to it. And it's starting at the crown of your head. And it's starting to fill in, so it comes across the scalp, across the forehead and the back of the skull. Starts to fill in over the eyebrows and behind the eyelids, the eyeballs, the back of the skull. It comes down into the nose, the cheeks, the back of the head. Comes across the skull, back of the skull, the jawbone, starts to fill the throat. As it fills the front and the back of the throat, it comes down to the nape of the neck. It spreads wide across the collarbones and the shoulder blades. And it starts to pour forth towards the upper arm bones, pour forth into the elbows and the elbow pits, pour forth down across the forearms, down into the wrists, the fronts, the backs of the palms, and each of the 10 fingers. And then you'll draw your awareness back up from the fingertips, up into the wrists, the elbows, the shoulders, the base of the throat. And then we continue to pour our awareness down through the chest, the back of the shoulder blades, the ribs, the back of the ribs, the abdomen, the mid to low back, the front of the pelvis, the back of the pelvis. And then this awareness, this amrita, this energy goes down through the legs, the fronts and the backs of the thighs, goes over the kneecaps and the knee pits, down through the calves and the shins, filling the ankles, the tops of the feet, the soles of the feet, and each of the 10 toes. And then as you're here in your awareness, you'll then draw your awareness back up through the tips of the toes, to the ankles, the calves and the shins, the knees, the thighs, the pelvis, the abdomen, the heart space, the throat, the forehead, and the crown. Now, as you inhale, fill the torso with breath. So the breath is pouring in through the skull. It's filling the whole torso with breath. And then you exhale and send that energy out through the pelvis, through the legs, and through the feet. And you'll just repeat that 3 more times on your own. So breath fills from the crown, it fills the torso. And then you exhale through the legs and through the feet. And after this last pass of just allowing the nectar to fill the upper body and to remove any of the toxins through the lower body, bring your awareness to where your breath feels most easeful. So you might feel that in the throat, you might feel that in the chest, in the abdomen. But you'll just allow your awareness to rest there for the next few moments. And at any point, if the mind wanders, which it may, simply notice that and come back to where the breath feels more easeful. And I'll mind the time and let you know when it's time to come out. Gently return your awareness to your breath. As you come back to your breath, just take a moment to check in. Notice if there's any part of you that longs to linger in this shape, and if so, stay here. When movement and life is calling you, invite it back in very gently, very slowly, very deliberately. Those that are in stillness, stay as long as you'd like. Those that are in movement, you'll slowly make your way to one of your sides and pause there for just 2 to 3 breath cycles. From your side, you'll slowly bring yourself up to a tall and comfortable seat. And then I want you to take the opportunity to really sit well. So however you can sit the most comfortably with the heart open, the shoulders over the ears, or rather the ears over the shoulders over the hips. And then I want you to place one hand on your heart and one hand on your belly. And just take 3 breaths here. Wherever you are, however life is looking at this moment, is exactly where you need to be, and this is exactly how it needs to be. The more we can remind ourselves that where we are and who we are is more than okay, more that it will give us the opportunity to show up as fully as we'd like with ourselves, with each other, and with whatever circumstances present themselves. So we'll go ahead and complete our practice with a collective breath, followed by a collective Om. Please draw your hands to heart center Anjali Mudra. Press the palms into each other. Receive the weight of the thumbs into your sternum and lift your heart towards your hands. Gently exhale all the breath from your mouths. Take a big breath in. Audible breath out. Inhale for Om. Join if you'd like. Om. To that light, to that breath, and to that sound, we bow. Namaste.